Not Sharon's on. There, we're on live.
Okay, welcome to Town of Bruderheim Council meeting. Would someone from council be willing to read the acknowledgement?
I can read it.
And Councillor Judy.
We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thank you very much. So we call this meeting to order. And is there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Nothing from administration, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, now we'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I can do that. I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thanks for that motion. Any comments, questions, or from council? Haven't heard none. Call for a vote then. Anyone opposed to that motion? And the motion is carried. So we will go into delegations and proclamation, or delegations, sorry. And we're very fortunate. We have Philip Dirks, and we also have Mike Krim with us. Is Philip going first or Mike going first?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Dirks is going first.
Okay, so welcome, Mr. Dirks. The floor is going to be presenting on the screen.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just going to share my screen here. Am I coming through good? Everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, as mentioned, my name's Phil Dirks, and I'm happy to be with you to say a few words about the town's 2020 financial statements and audit. So we will get right into it here as soon as I can move my screen. All right. There we go. All right, so just before we get into the numbers, I'll just say a few things about the auditor's report. So our job is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. And in doing so, we complete our audit in accordance with Canadian auditing standards. So at the top of this report, we've provided our opinion in which we're stating that the financial statements are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So clean opinion. The audit went very well. Thanks to Sharon and Patty and anyone else at the town office for all their help. The rest of the auditor's report is unchanged from last year. It just goes on to talk about more about what an audit is and what the auditors do. So probably the most important part is the opinion. Like I said, clean opinion, audit went very well. So I will just go right down to the statement of financial position. So we'll say a few words about some of the key things here. So you can see the town had $1.4 million of cash in the accounts at the end of the year. One of the key things in any audit is the receivable balances. So we'll just take a little bit deeper look at that. So here you can see the receivables, $1,160,000. Various items included in there, common items, taxes, 485,000. There's some MSI money, 565,000. That's the 2020 allocation and some of 2019. So no issues there with collections. Standard kind of things such as utilities and a few other receivables. So total again was $1,160,000. There is a small allowance for some slow paying accounts there, 27,000. But overall, again, total receivables were just over 1.1 million. So I'll just go back to the page that we were on. So total financial assets then were 2.6 million. So those are going to be items that are either cash or hopefully will be cash in the near term. As far as liabilities that the town has, you can see here that total liabilities were just over 2.9 million. There's various trade payables. Those can fluctuate one year to the next year. You can see it's a little bit higher than last year. It really has to do with timing primarily. The only thing that's a little bit different than 2019 was the town has to pay its share of the RCMP costs now. So that was $26,000. That's included in the 309. Other than that, probably one of the biggest liabilities is deferred revenue. So these are funds that the town has received but hasn't spent yet. So here we can see what makes up that number, 1,209,000. You can see that a good portion of that is MSI money. Here is again where I was talking about your 2020 allocation was 368,243. So that hadn't been received yet, but it was coming. But you can see that the biggest part of that balance is these couple of numbers here at the top, MSI capital, and then you have a community partnership grant for the water reservoir, 131,000. So anyways, the point is these monies are restricted by various agreements and so on for certain items. And once you spend them on those items, they will become income or revenue. Town also has long-term debt of 1.4 million. So we'll just take a look at that as well. You can see here debentures with the province, 1.4 million. And that debt matures anywhere out to 2051. So I should be about 35 by the time that happens. Just kidding, I might be dead by then. Anyways, that's the debt that the town has, and you can see here the repayment schedule for interest and principal, but we've confirmed that balance with the province. So total liabilities were 2,949,000. Total financial assets were 2,600,000, give or take. And the difference between those two items is net debt. So net debt is 350,000. This is just money that's going to have to be raised from future taxes. But again, you have to remember that that does include all the debt, which as we saw is going to be paid off over a number of years. So that's all I'll say about that. Biggest asset on any municipal financial statements is a non-financial asset or not cash or near cash or will never be cash, tangible capital assets. So $12 million of capital assets the town had at the end of the year. We'll just take a look at what happened there last year. Or maybe just before I do that, I was talking about debt. I was going to just mention the debt limits. So these are required to be disclosed by the Municipal Government Act. So you had $2,757,000 of debt limit remaining. So you could borrow up to that much more without asking Mr. Kenny for permission. So you're well within your debt limits. Capital assets last year, we can see here the items that the town purchased were 516,000 roughly. You did some sidewalk work here, 204,000. Then you did some work on the water reservoir project. Some work on the buildings. That was a new office roof, or roof on the shop and the public works office. And you bought a tractor included in the 86,000. And then some work on the skate park primarily. So our main concern is we don't want things being recorded as assets that don't meet the definition of asset. So all these items clearly met the definition of an asset. So those are your additions for last year. When all the smoke clears here, this is the number that's on the statement of financial position, $12 million. And again, that's cost less accumulated amortization. So those are not meant to be an indication of what you could sell roadways for example. A big portion of that is roadways. It's just what you paid for those assets, what the town paid for them, less depreciation on those assets over the years.
Oh, excuse me, tell me if I'm wrong, Philip. So if you go back to that first slide or leave it there, that tangible capital assets, if someone said, what is the town worth? It's worth 12,136,000.
Well, that's part of the net worth, yes. Here, I guess my point was, that's not necessarily what you could sell those for, if you could sell roads, but that's what they're on the books for.
Yeah.
But that is definitely part of the town's net worth. Yes, it's included in the accumulated surplus here.
Yeah.
So if you took the net debt and added all the non-financial assets, that would give you the accumulated surplus. So one other thing just to mention there, prepaid expenses were a little bit higher than last year. That's due to the Emergency Operations Center. There was a deposit made on that work for about $35,000. So that will eventually end up in the capital asset account. So we'll just move on to the statement of operations. So this is town's revenues and expenses. So you can see here, total revenue was 2.7 million, or almost just about 2,750,000. The budget was 2.8. So there was a few things to comment on here. You can see in sales and user charges. So that's primarily water, sewer, garbage fees. The budget was a little bit ambitious there in the water and sewer. That's why that's under budget. And interestingly enough, you did increase the fees slightly, but you can see that the revenue went down a bit. Consumption was down last year. So I think it was a fairly wet summer, but maybe people are actually watching their consumption a little bit more. Government transfers for operations, those are grants. So you can see there, the town budget 125, the actual was 191. You did receive some most money, municipal operating support transfer, $35,000. So that was for COVID. That was not anticipated at the budget time. And then LC Ready grant of $36,000. So that's why grant revenue is a little bit higher than actual, or than budget, sorry. Only other thing on the revenue side, rentals here, you can see the impact of COVID on the arena and the campground. Basically $40,000 less on the arena and 10 on the campground. So again, that's why you're down from 2019 as well. Other than that, well, the only other place where COVID might have had an impact is interest. Rates were down quite a bit after COVID. So town had a little bit less interest than what was planned. But overall, again, here, roughly, excuse me, $50,000 less revenue than budget. When we look at expenses, there's a few things to comment on here. Total expenses were just under 3 million. Administration, you can see that was quite a bit under budget. That was mostly wages due to COVID. About $50,000 worth of budget savings there. Parks and Recreation was also a little bit under budget. You know, there was less campground, less arena, so that filters into some of these costs as well. Roads, walks and lighting, didn't do dust control. So that's why that was a little bit under budget. Many of these items are very close to budget. You see waste management, close to budget. Land use planning and development, that was under budget primarily due to COVID. Wastewater treatment and disposal, saved there on some repairs and maintenance, which budget I think was 30 or it came in around 15. So you escaped without anything too serious happening in that area. Council, again, some savings there with COVID. And on down the list here, excuse me. But overall, again, total expenses were just under 3 million. The budget was about 3.2 million. So I'm going to do a little bit of a magic show here. We always get, I have to do some math for amortization because you've budgeted for that now and it's included in the actual numbers. And when you look at your annual operating surplus before other revenue, it looks like you didn't bring in enough revenue to cover your expenses. So if we just go to the next page here, I've removed amortization. This isn't in your financial statements, but you'll have to trust me. Here we go. Amortization is gone. Abracadabra. So now you can see you actually had budgeted for a surplus from operations of 71,500, and the actual was 264, primarily due to many of the line items being under budget in response to COVID. So that's why you do have to do a little bit of math there, but this would be your operating surplus, not counting amortization. So you did bring in enough money to cover the expenses for sure. So hopefully that's, just remember that page isn't in your financial statements. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with some other revenue. So there was some fairly substantial other revenue last year. So those again are government transfers for capital assets. So we mentioned earlier that the town had purchased about $500,000 of capital assets. So these two line items here more or less paid for those assets. You covered your sidewalk work with gas tax funding, 180,000, and some MSI money. Paid for the tractor with MSI, the shop roof, and the emergency operations center costs with the municipal stimulus program. So those are all included in this revenue here. So that revenue totals up to 509,000, and there's no costs in the financial statements for those revenues, as those got recorded as assets. So for accounting purposes, your annual surplus, the town's annual surplus last year was 284,000. But again, from our standpoint, most important line would be the annual operating surplus or deficit. But again, you'd have to do the math or do the magic with the amortization like we did. So overall, you know, those are good results. I did take some pretty cautious approach to things after COVID started, and paid some dividends. So other than that, I'm just gonna take a look here. A couple other things I was gonna point out. If we look at this picture here, this looks at your town's revenue and expenses by basically various departments. So environmental services, that's water, sewer, garbage. Total revenue from the various charges was 868. Total expenses 653. So you did actually have a $215,000 surplus in that area. So those are covering themselves. Last year and in 2019 as well, that number was about 238. So those are definitely covering the costs for those 2 years. As far as other notes go, maybe just give me a second here to go through them, make sure oh yeah, annual surplus. So accumulated surplus. We talked about this earlier on the statement of financial position. The town's accumulated surplus was 11,833,000. So that's made up of a couple of line items. Good portion of that, like we said, is equity in the capital assets. So that's the town's capital asset balance less the related debt. Just like you have equity in your home, the town has equity in its non-financial assets as well. So a good portion of that is not spendable. You also have some reserves set aside in accordance with the town's reserve policy and various council motions. Those are set aside here. So you have 932,000 at the end of the year. And then also there's a unrestricted surplus of 154,000 that can be used for funding operating operations. So other than that, I'm just going to make sure I didn't forget about something here. Oh, just in case you're wondering why we would have a note about COVID. It was really just in case you weren't aware that there was a pandemic out there. So we thought we'd let you know. That's a bit of accounting humor. Anyways, it's pretty dry. Anyhow, first paragraph just describes the situation. second paragraph states that, you know, there's been some impact, but it hasn't really significantly impacted the town's operation, or more importantly, the financial condition to date. But as you know, we're still in the thick of it, and who knows, there's still a high level of uncertainty and some risk that there could be financial impact going forward. So if you looked at, you know, pretty much any statement, financial statement these days, there's going to be some type of note disclosure about COVID. So that's why that's there. So that's what I had to say about the financial statements. Maybe I'll just stop there for see if there's any questions about that before I wrap things up.
Anyone have any questions for Philip? Councillor Judy?
I have no questions, but evidently I want to commend administration for getting the utilities down, although our arena was up, but still doing a good job and somewhat balancing things out during a hard year.
I have one question.
Go ahead, Councillor George.
Yeah, I didn't see any place for our land reserve on our, we have a piece of land over on the east side of town here. I didn't see where it was.
Oh,
The capital assets.
I could be included in this line here, most likely. So this is a list of, it would be included in this line, I think. Oh, that's the only place it would be. If there was land, it would be included in this number here in capital assets.
So that gives us which, that plus whatever land we own.
Yes, yeah, there is a list that goes behind this number, which you could get from administration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Would it be fair to say that in the budget from last year, which administration did an excellent job, I think, handling through the COVID issues, you were talking about pay for the town staff, that there's a difference there from year to year, right?
Sorry,
The staff had to operate somewhat short-handed during the past year, so that must have made an impact on the budget there, right?
Oh, yeah, I think that was up here primarily, and maybe Patty can answer better, but in administration, that's where there was definitely some savings on the wages, which was due to COVID.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. 2 positions plus no casuals since last March. So that's almost $100,000 savings right there in administration.
So thank you for a great job to administration and to just wanted to ask that question for the benefit of folks that would be watching. I'm pretty sure that council is well aware of that. Thank you very much, Philip. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts or comments on Philip's presentation?
I just had a few things to say about this letter yet, and then I can
Sure.
get out of your way.
Yeah, we need some more than auditor humor.
Well, I always tell people I'd love to talk to you about a lot of other stuff, but this is my job, so we'll try to do our best. But anyways, we do have personalities. This is the audit findings report. This is, again, a requirement of Canadian auditing standards. We're just reporting back to council about various items that were required to report back on under the auditing standards. So we didn't find any significant deficiencies in internal controls. Top of the second page, auditor's supposed to comment on things that are, you know, if there's unusual accounting practices or policies. There isn't any. Very standard policies and procedures for a municipality. We're just letting you know here where there was some estimates made, amortization for capital assets, and the allowance for doubtful accounts. But pretty standard types of estimates for municipalities. Nothing unusual. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So during the course of the audit, there was a few corrections that we identified and Sharon agreed with. So those were not very many. Audit went very well, like I said. And after those items got changed, there was not any uncorrected misstatements. And you might think, well, why would there be uncorrected misstatements? There can be sometimes uncorrected misstatements if the client doesn't want to make the adjustments that the auditor feels is necessary. Sometimes we agree to disagree. Other than that, significant difficulties, there was no difficulties at all. So again, thank you very much to Sharon and the other staff for all their help in getting things ready for us and helping us finish things on a timely basis. Other than that, there's just one matter here, just some very, very minor thing, and I think Sharon's already corrected that going forward. And then auditor independence, we're just letting you know that there's nothing that we're aware of that would cause a conflict of interest between our firm and the town, or a impairment of our independence or objectivity in completing the audit. So overall, I think it's a good year. The town's still in good shape, came through COVID without being too detrimentally impacted. So good news story. So I will leave it at that unless somebody has some questions for me.
Well, it looks like you've satisfied everyone's curiosity and filled us up with great information. Thank you very much, Philip.
You're very welcome. And like I said before, I think if you do think of other questions that you wished you would have asked me, definitely Patty can put you in touch with me or let me know if there's answers required to some other questions. So be happy to do that. But thank you for having me, and I wish you all a good evening.
Yep. Yeah,
Thanks,
Thank you
Phil.
very much.
Thanks.
Good
we'll
night.
hit you for more auditor jokes.
Night.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just read their request for decision after receiving. We're recommending that town council accept the audited financial statements for the town of Bruderheim for the year ended December 31st, 2020. And we're also asking that town council accept the audited financial information return for the town of Bruderheim for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Annually, a summary of the financial status and results of the operations prepared and presented to town council for the review and approval. Furthermore, as required by the Municipal Government Act, the MGA, the financial affairs of the town of Bruderheim are audited by an independent auditor. Town council has engaged Metrics Group Chartered Professional Accountants to complete this required audit. In addition to conducting their audit, the town's auditors also assist town staff in analyzing the books and records of the town and provide suggestions for improvement to council administration. Financial Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26, Section 276 to 77, Annual Financial Statements and Auditors Report. With the completion of the 2020 audit, the town of Bruderheim has fulfilled its reporting responsibility as required by the Municipal Government Act. In accordance with the provisions of the MGA, copies of the audited 2020 financial statements and the audited financial information returns are required to be forwarded to the Minister of the Department of Municipal Affairs subsequent to the council review and approval. Also, in accordance with the provisions of the MGA, the 2020 financial statements or a summary of them and the auditor's report must be made available to the public. Following town council approval of the audited 2020 financial statements and financial information return, copies will be forwarded to the Minister of the Department of Municipal Affairs. The audited financial statements will be posted on the town website. A copy will be displayed at the Metro Kelowna Library, and a copy will be available to view at the town office. We've attached the draft financial statements for year ended December 31st, 2020, as well as the draft financial information return to December 31st, 2020. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
So we're looking for a motion from council to accept the audited financial statements.
I'll make that motion.
Who's going to send up? Yeah.
I make the motion that the town council accept the audited financial statements for the town of Bruderheim for the year ending December 31st, 2020 as presented.
Thank you very much, Councilor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, hearing none, call for a vote. Anyone opposed to that motion? And the motion's carried. Now we're looking for a motion for the audited financial information return. Councilor Wayne.
Town council accept the audited financial information return for the town of Bruderheim for the year ended December 31st, 2020.
Thank you for that motion. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion? Just again, I'd like to commend our CIO and town staff. Came through a very tumultuous year and it looks like in good shape. So financially. Thank you for that. Hearing no other comments, questions, or concerns, call for a vote then. Anyone opposed to the motion? And that motion's carried. Now we move on to 5.2, Bruderheim assessment presentation. And we have the privilege of having Mike Krim up for his presentation. And Heidi, do you want to read the preamble first?
Actually don't have a preamble for that one, do I, Mrs. Cote? Don't think I do. No, we don't have a motion for that.
So welcome, Mike Krim, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Through your worship, I'd like to thank everybody for having me out today. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Coming up. There we go.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm here to present the assessment information for the 2020 assessment year, 2021 tax year. Do this on a yearly basis as an update to council and your ratepayers of the town. Show people what transpired over the last year and what happened with market values and a little bit about growth. What we found in the town of Bruderheim was similar to other towns, and I'll explain everything as I go along and just get right into it here. In previous presentations that I've provided to you, I've always kind of given a little bit of a assessment 101, explaining a little bit about assessment and how it works in Alberta, but we deemed it not necessary to do that this year, rather to just touch on the high level important dates issues, which is very important in assessment in Alberta. And that first valuation date, July 1st of 2020, that means that all properties using the market value standard are assessed as of this date. So for last year, they were assessed as of July 1st, 2019, this year, July 1st of 2020. We also have a condition date that is legislated by the province that we use for any physical condition or physical characteristics. That's December 31st of 2020. So for example, if a house is a new house or a garage or building is under construction and still under construction, December 31st, 2020, we have to reflect on the assessment for 2021 taxation. So those are two more important high level things that we want to touch on right off the bat. We conduct a yearly assessment review of about 20% of the properties in town, and those highlighted areas on the aerial photo show the areas that we concentrated on in 2020. So a little bit in Brookside and a little bit in Sunset. Now, typically in past years, we would have driven by these houses, knocked on doors where required, and we would knock on doors if we saw physical changes on the exterior that might clue us into thinking that there might be some more as far as renovations on the interior. We were looking for, first of all, windows, doors, siding, roof, soffits, fascia, and that would potentially indicate that we might need more information, and we'd leave a callback card on the door. Because of COVID and because people are more vigilant than ever about having anybody at their door, we've taken on a different stance in this last year. We've implemented it in Bruderheim. We've implemented it in a number of other municipalities, and a number of assessment departments across Alberta have also implemented it. And that is sending out a survey or a request for information to residential property owners. That residential request for information was sent out to 121 properties with houses on them in those two areas I identified on the previous slide. And we actually received a 72% response rate for the first time out, which is excellent. When we take into consideration the kind of response that we normally get in a year, this far surpasses it, and we're getting good information too. So thanks to all the residents of the town for submitting that information willingly and accurately. That request typically asks for stuff that we would want on the assessment anyways, including the number of bathrooms. We have a lot of that information already, but we wanted to confirm and identify maybe any changes or renovations that we don't have. So fireplaces, the amount of basement finish, the year of renovations, replacement of windows and doors, kitchen cabinets, flooring, those kinds of things. The market value did go down again, on average about 5.1% in the town of Bruderheim. And this map shows on a per area basis what we found. So 3.3% down in West Woodlands, 7.5% down in Sunset, 5% and 3% down in the central area of town, 5.4% in Brookside, The small residential part on the south side of town, 5.6%. Not on this map, but something I can tell you is anything outside of those zones, so acreage type properties went down also about 4.4%. And then on the north side there, the mobile home park and the mobile home subdivision were also down 11.8% on the subdivision. We're finding that some of these mobile homes are just not getting the value that they used to get. So values have certainly come down on those. And on the mobile home park, the values were already low anyways for those, for most of those properties. So there wasn't a big change as compared to the other side.
Mike, I have a question for you. Sorry, it's Wayne.
Yes.
Going back, there's some houses on the west side of the maintenance yard. Those fall into the minus 4.9%.
So you're talking up in here
No,
or here?
yeah, right there.
They would fall into the 4.4% for miscellaneous acreage type properties.
And that would also include Teal's Greenhouse Road there and
These ones over here as well. That's correct.
south of town.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Good question I was gonna ask.
The average assessment is now at 207,600 for a single family dwelling, down 4.2% from 216,700. So the 4.2% is a little different than the previous slide, which is 5.1. That is just the market value change. This is the average assessment from last year to this year. And there's always growth in there. And that's why that number will be a little bit different. So 207,600. I've got a slide coming up showing what happened in some of the other municipalities that are your neighbors. This slide shows towards the bottom, the long yellow bar, 69.45% of your single family properties went down between -3 and -8%. Now, if you include everything that either had no change or went down from no change to -8% or more, you're closer to 93% of your single family properties having seen a decrease. Anything that saw an increase is typically going to have had some type of growth, be it through renovations or an addition like a garage, those kinds of things. Other municipalities, we do assessment on all these municipalities, and we saw in Bon Accord that single family were down 3.6% with an average assessment now of 250,000. Fort Saskatchewan was also down 3%. Their average assessment's now 375,700. Redwater down 6%. So a little bit more than Bruderheim. Their average assessment is now under 200,000, 194,200. And Lamont saw a 3.8% market change as well. 187,800 is their average single family dwelling. On the commercial or light industrial side, we don't have a lot of data in sales or anything like that, but we saw in other jurisdictions that there was some value decrease in commercial properties, 3% and 2% for your commercial light industrial. Where it's significantly bigger or a deeper assessment cut is on the Studio 6 hotel. That assessment is down almost 59% year over year. And I can answer questions if you have about that. I wanted to also show that it's not, well, it seems to be a lot higher than some of the other ones. You can see some of the other ones. Fort Saskatchewan, their average decrease in assessment for hotels was 26%. Lamont, 2 hotels there, 35%. Edmonton, on average, saw a 40% decrease in hotels. And this is all related to the pandemic and the significant impact it had on hospitality industry right across the world, really, not exclusive to Alberta by any means. And a couple other ones there as well, St. Albert 27, Leduc 22, Whitecourt 33, and Sherwood Park 26. For assessment growth, we didn't have any new houses built. There was 1 permit issued on the east side of town, but there was no start on it yet. So we're following that up next year, or this year, I guess now. 2 new garages that we added to the roll, 3 houses that were built in 2017 that are no longer tax-free. So you're going to collect some tax on those this year. And then we got some growth from our assessment review area through the renovations that we picked up. This is a new slide. I don't believe I put this in previous years. Just shows where your assessment is broken down and a year over year or comparison, I guess, between 2020 tax year and 2021 tax year. Farmland assessment, residential, commercial and light industrial, and designated industrial. Your designated industrial is your wells and pipelines and power transmission, cable transmission, telecommunications, everything that's done by the province of Alberta. So what we see is a drop from the 2020 tax year of 145.8 million down to 138.8 million. You had growth of about 1.5 million or 1%, but the deflationary toll on the property values is where you end up losing some assessment, almost 8.5 million or 5.8% overall. So what's next? Property tax bylaw, mailing of assessment notices, and we'll take inquiries and we'll do some inspections if required, and we'll have to adhere to any kind of COVID protocol that's still in effect at that time. And if we need to, we'll do assessment review board hearings. We also want to get another good start on the next assessment cycle, which means more RFIs or requests for information and potentially some inspections. And I would like to add also that in that 72% response rate that we had for those properties we looked at last year, the 28% that didn't respond, we did do a drive-by on those and picked up a little bit of assessment there as well.
Mike, just a quick question. So yes. If there was anyone doing inquiries, needing inspections, or going to the assessment review board because of COVID, is things changing, or is it going to still be the same process? Or what?
We found we were able to do somewhat more work through our emailing back and forth with the ratepayers, especially when they had specific issues that we need to look at. They were able to send us photos oftentimes, which really, really helped out. Most of the other inquiries were just about, why did my assessment go up or down? And they just wanted to have an answer to that question. I don't recall if we actually did any. We might have done one or two physical inspections with people wanting to come out and not feeling threatened in any way. We would make sure we would have masks on, and they were wearing masks as well. And everybody was okay with that when we did do those inspections.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a map of our next assessment review area. So we've got the commercial area downtown and some residential as well. So we'll be in touch with Sharon, Patty, Sherry about potentially getting some more residential requests for information out this year. And then we typically handle the commercial requests from our office. The commercial requests are for rented properties, and there's not a lot of them. Most of them are owner occupied. So we will send out to the ones that we know that are rented, as well as we'll continue to get information from the hotel property owner and the couple of multifamily properties that you have in town as well. And this is my last slide. So just some more links to website links that are available to you and to your ratepayers to learn more, a little bit more about the assessment taxation process in Alberta, and also a link to our website. And on our website, we have assessment summary reports that people can generate right on the website if they're looking to compare to a similar property in their neighborhood. For example, they want to see how their assessment is in comparison to somebody else's assessment. They can certainly come to our website and do that. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Mike. Does anyone from council have questions for Mike? Councilor Judy?
So I'm assuming our assessment down is a lot to do with very little home selling last year.
Little home
I know what happened COVID, but because of that also, right?
Yeah, I mean, markets are funny. They just kind of work on their own regardless of what people might think. We were expecting maybe even a bigger decrease in assessment when the pandemic first hit than what really transpired. And now we're seeing some little increases in values. So as assessors, all we can do is follow what the market shows us. And if the sales are coming through, and you're right, there's not a lot of sales in Bruderheim, but the sales that came through showed us that values were down on those property types.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can't see all of council right now with the presentation being shared. So if anyone else wants to speak.
I can turn this off.
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to encourage them to shout out if they wanted to ask a question. Just one question that I had, Mike, I don't recall seeing it in your presentation, was the area for the hemp company. they must have been on the assessment. Maybe I just missed seeing where it was on your presentation.
Yeah, so the hemp facility didn't have a lot of change from the previous year. We picked up a new truck scale. And this year, I think from talking with Aaron at the hemp facility, they're going to be doing some more work and hopefully getting things going. And we're going to be spending some time at that facility. I'm actually going to be looking to hire an expert in the industrial side of it, the machinery and equipment expert to help me out with that assessment this year going forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Oh, you must have satisfied all of council. Thank you very much for your time, Mike, and we appreciate your presentation every year. Great work for our town. We have come to trust you very much, and we appreciate what you do for us. We're looking for a motion from council to accept the town of Bruderheim assessment as information. Councilor Powell.
I move that council accept the town of Bruderheim assessment presentation as information from Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Anyone opposed to the motion? And the motion's carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Mike.
Thank you for having me all.
Yeah, we'll have to get some assessor jokes from you for next year. Eh?
Right. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Next on the agenda is adopting the minutes of March 17th regular meeting of council. Would someone be willing to make that motion? Councilor Powell.
I move that town council adopt the minutes of March 17th, 2021 regular meeting of council.
Thank you for that. Anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns with the motion on the minutes? Everything looks good. Councilor Powell.
I believe that the adjournment time is off by an hour.
So that will be
An hour to the good.
Depends on your definition of good, but thank you for that. I appreciate you catching that. Very good. Any other
You bet.
comments, questions, or concerns with the minutes from this meeting? No. Okay, call for a vote then. Anyone opposed to the motion to accept the minutes as amended? And the motion's carried. Great. Now we move on to council priorities. So we're looking for information requests. We'll start with Councilor Jordan.
I have an information request. Maybe could maybe end up even in a motion. I've had a few people ask me about the book that was printed in 1983 by the Bruderheim Historical Society. And I did some inquiries and there's no copies left other than the one that's in the museum in the Walker School and the one I have that I know of.
I believe the town has a copy.
Well, no, they haven't. Anyway, I was kind of thinking that maybe the town could spearhead a reproduction, a reprint of that book as part of a, how should I say, preserve the history of this town, and maybe provide some information or into the how this town was developed. A lot of people coming to our town don't have any idea of what transpired and how it got to where it is today. And this book, I have it with me. It has a lot of information going back to the 1890s and the settlement and the people that developed the area and what we had for commerce and how it was developed and the people who did it. I think it could be a cost recovery project in the matter that if we as a council was to approve this and have the book printed, we could recover our cost in resale of the item.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Campbell. Actually, I did a little investigating into that, and that book in the museum was transferred over to the Bruderheim Agriculture Society. So I could reach out to them and see if they wanted to do a partnership, but the town did years ago kind of turn over all the history of the town and the museum over to the Ag Society. So I could spearhead a conversation with them if you'd like.
Well, I think the longer we wait, it's going to get put by the wayside again. And I had a conversation with one of the members there, and I don't think they have the funds for it. I'm looking towards the town for support in this.
Okay, Councillor Pat wanted to ask a question.
For some reason, there's a thought that the Bruderheim seniors tried to initiate or get something going with the Bush to Bushels book. And there was, it wasn't going to happen. I don't know copyright. I don't know what the whole deal was, but it was a no-go. That was a couple of years ago, I think. But they definitely had an interest going at the seniors, Bruderheim seniors, and it what do you call them? The big fences to get going on that was a lot. So we just kind of let it go because you know, it wasn't going to be something feasible.
Thank you for that.
I have the book here right now, and all copyrights are reserved by the Bruderheim Historical Society, but there is no such thing today as the Bruderheim Historical Society. It's been malfunctioned, so that shouldn't be a problem. The problem being is, how long do we put this off? The problem being is, we have as much liability for preserving the past as we do as looking into the future. And the cost that I was quoted at about $50 a book, which for 100 books would be $5,000.
So I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm wondering if you would maybe want to make a motion, George, to direct administration to look into the idea of doing that and then bring back what the research shows to council for a future decision.
Yes, but I would like it done in a timely manner. Lots of times we make motions and these things get put to wayside, and I will make that motion.
Mr. Mayor, could I just add another comment? Just to Councillor Campbell's comment about the Historical Society. They signed those rights over to the Bruderheim Agriculture Society. I remember checking into that for the seniors. So the Bruderheim Ag Society has the publishing rights for that right now.
And I don't think that they would have much problem giving us the right to print it if we were paying for it.
The reason I made that comment about the book for the town, because I know that an area resident donated a book to the town, so maybe the town copy was given to the Ag Society for preservation. So if you want to make that motion, Councillor George, go ahead.
Yes, I will make a motion that our administration research and the copying of the book From Bush to Bushels with the costs, with the printing rights, and in a timely fashion.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion? Okay, call for a vote then. All those opposed to the motion? And the motion's carried. And we must note that Deputy Mayor Dan arrived just before George's motion. Welcome, Deputy Mayor Dan. So any other information request, Councillor George?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
No problem. Councillor
No, I realize, you know, it's an important book. I have one myself. It was hard found by my kids. They are out there, but I do realize that we did try to follow a course with the seniors to try to get something going, and the fact that the signatures, the people, the rights, it's a real spider's web, tangled, whatever, but I just don't believe it's something that the admin should be utilizing the time with right now.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pack.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Dan, any information requests?
None for me at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Judy.
None for me at this time, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Len.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, and I have to apologize, our youngest, no, sorry, not youngest anymore, council member.
Not a request, but just an information. Some changes with the library as these new restrictions came down yesterday, that the library will be just doing a pickup. So I guess like a curbside pickup on Tuesdays and Wednesdays now. So there will be no in-person in library visits, I guess. So.
Okay.
Mayor Carl through Councillor Lecco, could you have them send us an email and we can get that out on social media, like just
Yeah.
confirming all the details? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you the email that I got from them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wayne. For myself, I do have an information request. This coming summer, on the walking trails, there are some deep ruts forming from cracks in the trail, maybe requiring more than our usual amount of crack repair, and I just wanted to make sure that that was on the radar for this year potentially. Right on. Thank you. And the other information request is it's been noticed that the street lights, especially down at the south end of Queen Street, some of them have a lot of paint peeling off. The black is coming off, and is that Fortis's responsibility or the town's responsibility? How can we get that patched up?
Mr. Mayor, we're meeting with Fortis and we have that on our list. Mr. Thomashat and myself.
Great, thank you very much. And the last thing, once we get out of the COVID timeframe, is there anything that we can do? And I know this has been asked before, and on Queen Street, we have some homes there near the kind of business center area that nothing seems to change over the years, and some of them are vacant. And is there anything that we can do to try to encourage something different to happen there?
Mr. Mayor, I know that Mrs. Cote has been working with those owners of those properties and yeah, trying to look for options and encourage growth, and she will continue to do that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's probably being done, but just encourage those folks if they have ideas to bring them forward, and you know, council is always interested in listening. So I just wanted to bring that up. So, and just also wanted to say thank you for opening up the skateboard park. Kids are loving it, so that's great. Moving on to program requests.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Lecco has a question.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a couple of things that came up. I know it was mentioned, or we talked about this, I think it was last year about this time, on the east side of the walking path, the circle in West Woodlands area here. Is there going to be some work done so the water doesn't keep building up against that, the walking path itself there?
Mr. Thomashat, did you want to address that question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lecco, that exact area, we have a section of culvert. Basically, we have an idea. We're going to dig that little bit of section up about 7 feet on either side and put a culvert with some sort of a swale, a collection swale, so it goes underneath. And that's what's happening. And even, you know, 4 years ago when I started, that was a problem area. I think myself and one of my staff, we've come up with a solution, and that's one of the things we're going to do. Very low cost, but a high impact is what we're looking for. So hopefully this will work this year, but it is on my agenda to get it done this year.
Awesome. Thank you for that. The other thing I have, is there any gonna be maintenance done to the walking path this year or next? It just seems to be getting narrower and narrower. So I'm just wondering if there's gonna be anything going with that.
Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Thomas?
yeah, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Letko. So I think if all council has seen, we did start a program last year on widening some of our sidewalks that were getting down to 3 feet wide, but they were actually 4 feet wide. Specifically, we started in Brookside and we did some in Sunset. We did obtain somewhat of an edging machine this year. So we're hoping to be able to do some of that. The walking trails, to be honest with you, Councillor Lecco, were not on my radar. The sidewalks were because they're starting to retain water and starting to lift. So I looked at that more so from a safety perspective as I did a aesthetic perspective. With that being said, certainly if there's time, we will definitely address the walking trails.
Yeah, I just, but if there's something that can be done, it may not be done right away, but you know, in the near future, if something can be looked at, just so that we don't lose what we have.
Yeah, and as I said, this is part of our asset management program, trying to identify some of these deficiencies and get them done in a reasonable time. So going forward, I know that those are some problem areas that you're talking about, but again, I'm going to address the sidewalks first, and if time permits, we will address those walking trails later on in the summer.
Oh, awesome. Even if it's not done this year, just something that's in the, you know, on paper, so.
Yeah, it's in the queue. It's definitely in the queue.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wayne. Definitely agree when the water is coming across the walkway and at nighttime it's freezing, it's just a sheet of ice there. Mr. Thomas, I have to notice that that haircut makes you look 20 years younger.
Mr. Mayor, just to update when we're speaking of sidewalks and trails as well, we received the Fortis grant. We are going to use that with the MSP grant for the crosswalk on Queen Street and 52nd. And Mr. Thomas and myself looked at it, and we're actually going to widen it there with that extra funding. So there's actually like a curb to stand on before they cross the street, and just make that more of a clear crossing. So we're excited about that because right now there's no cement there. When the children cross, there's just standing on the dirt, really in the ditch. So look for that to happen on 52nd and Queen Street this summer too.
That'll have the solar powered crosswalk light.
Yes, as well. Yes.
Oops,
Awesome,
thank you.
awesome.
Great. So continuing on, program requests. Working in reverse order, Councillor Wayne, any program requests?
Nothing at this time, no.
Thank you. Councillor Len,
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Judy,
Nothing at this time.
Deputy Mayor Dan,
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councillor Pat,
Nothing, thanks.
and Councillor George.
Nothing at this time, thanks.
For myself, I do have one program type of request. Looking for administration to help facilitate a virtual type of meeting. I've been hearing a few virtual from different councils, and the specific request, I'll just read it out, is please plan to provide an opportunity to answer questions from our residents, along with our county rep, be it the Reeve or county councillor, and our MLA. It would be a live event, virtually, of course, with our admin as moderator. The questions would be sent in from any person by email or written. Timing of this event will be determined by availability of the folks and what admin can come up with. Possibly a theme to the event. For example, what does your government do for the resident at the municipal, county, or provincial level, and help communicate what these levels of government can or cannot do. And I spoke to our MLA and our council county rep for our area, Neil Woitis, and they are all amenable to the idea, pending timing, of course. So I wanted to just throw that out there. If we could, if I need to make a motion or not, just looking to see if we could facilitate something like this to help communicate to our residents in a virtual setting. So I was looking for feedback from council.
I'd be for that. I'd be all for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wayne.
So is this,
Mayor Dan?
sorry,
I absolutely like the idea of feedback from town residents. I've been looking for ways to reach out and get more people's interests, to bring forward questions that they might have for us. I I'm for it.
Thanks. Councillor Wayne?
So is this questions for council or would this be questions for the county as well as the MLA?
Yeah, so it would be for all three levels. I was able to listen to the town of Vermilion. They did this. It was facilitated by their Chamber of Commerce. Unfortunately, we don't have a Chamber of Commerce, but they posted it live on YouTube or Facebook, and they had someone just moderate questions that were brought in and then given to whomever level of government to answer those questions. So, and it could go for, you know, an hour, depending on how many questions I guess we get. But I think it would be a way to reach out to residents and allow them the opportunity to ask directly some questions. And so I know that we're always looking for ways to be able to communicate with our residents, and this could be one way to do that. And we could prepare a preamble speech of whatever council wants to say through that speech, and that would be afforded to each of the individuals in that presentation. But I listened to the one from the town of Vermilion. I've listened to some from different, like today I listened to one from County of Strathcona, had Mayor Nachu on, and folks were asking Mayor Nachu questions. So those type of opportunities is a great way to communicate with residents. So again, I'll ask, do I need a motion to bring this forward, CAO Pat? Or?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, because that will take resources to coordinate.
Okay, so that would be my motion, is to coordinate a virtual event with the three levels of government. Have administration be the moderator for the questions and post it either Facebook or YouTube or whatever format in the virtual world that would work for this presentation. And a date to be determined by administration. So I have to turn the hat over to Deputy Mayor Dan.
Excellent. So I guess at this point, I'm going to ask if there is any dissent.
Discussion?
Oh, we'll open the floor up for questions, comments. Councillor Wayne, sorry.
Would would it be, you're asking for the CAO or administration to be moderator, is that correct? Or would you want them involved with questions and answers and get somebody else to?
No, well, the idea would be that the questions could be sent into the town office via written or email format, and then administration would moderate, you know, provide the questions to the folks on the virtual event to answer the questions. So, you know, if it's obviously a provincial question or a town question or a county question, then that question could be directed to those folks in the event. But really the only resource we have to be a moderator would be our administration.
I'd rather not tie them up for that. I like the whole idea of doing this, but I think maybe there might be somebody that would be willing to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking someone from council could be the moderator, or what are you thinking?
Somebody from outside just to be a moderator.
Okay, I'm open to that idea.
It just leaves admin of one more task, I guess, right? Unless they're wanting to do it and willing to do it, it's totally up to them, but I just don't want to tie them with another task.
Mr. Mayor, if you can just make a motion for administration to look into it, and I can bring back the proposal to council.
Sure, I'd be happy to make that amendment.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Pat, did you have some questions or comments?
Well, I was just, the logistics, I mean, some people don't have, you know, the Zoom or the Twitter or the Facebook, or how are you gonna get these ones? It's that question again. Deputy Mayor Daniel, with how do you engage them when they don't have the equipment, technology, whatever? So there's a lot behind it as well, right? So, I mean, we're doing telephone town halls right now with our, you know, with the COVID issues going on, and Dr. Henshaw and different MLAs. So, you know, that's one way, but yeah, I don't know, I would say a headache for admin. But you know what, if they wanna get their feet wet.
Absolutely. Counselor Judy, go ahead.
I think it's a good idea. If nothing else, we might get our younger generation in. I mean, they're the ones that we're building the town for. If we can get them more involved. I mean, if the older generation wants to be there, somebody can set them up on Zoom or whatever. Or if we go live with Facebook and they send their questions into whoever, right? And they're sent off to the appropriate people, they'll answer the questions. And they can follow through on Facebook and get the answers, right? So that would not be a bad thing, but it's definitely a good thing. A new communication tool we can try, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Counselor George.
I think this would be a good thing because we have 3 levels of government in one position, in one place, where people can address these issues to. And it is a chance for us to be more open in governance and listen to the people and try to reach out. But if we don't try, you're never going to succeed. Or that's my comment, and I'm all for it 100%.
Thank you, Counselor George. Anybody else? I'll give you guys the standard 8 seconds to make up your minds.
Can you read the motion back, please?
So we're directing administration to research the idea of doing a virtual presentation with the 3 levels of government on virtual format. And administration would report back to council on what their findings would. Does that sound acceptable?
Sounds good.
Excellent. I think we've talked about that one well enough. So now we will move on. Does anybody, do we have any dissent?
Yeah.
Not hearing any.
I don't get to vote, yeah.
And the motion is passed. And I will take my hat back off and pass it back to Mayor Carl Hupp. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Great job. Thanks to council for being willing to try something new.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, Zoom does have a capability of doing Zoom as well as calling. So we'll present that to council. Just Council Lee had mentioned, maybe the phone would work better. We have an option of providing phone and computer. So they've just added that. That's kind of a cool option as well.
That is good. That is good, yeah.
Now, provided that folks, when they are making up their questions on a live format, that they be polite. That's the only thing. With a written or emailed request, you can control obviously the ones that are not polite, right? Something to consider. So if we move on for requests for decisions, 8.1 bylaw 04-2021 election bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to update the election bylaw to cover the latest changes to the Election Act. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw. The Town Council also give third reading to bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw. Council passed bylaw 17-2013, the election bylaw on August 21st, 2013. In 2020, the provincial government made several changes to the Local Authorities Election Act that necessitated some changes to the existing bylaw. On March 17, 2021, Council gave first reading to bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw. Strategic plan areas, opportunities to provide residents with information for them to consider in running for municipal office in our community, and also to be open and transparent governance. Community is educated on responsibilities and limitation of council and administration. It also provides accountability and transparency. Other impacts, Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26 in the Local Authorities Election Act. The bylaw has been revised in format and includes updated information. The intent of this bylaw is to provide residents and candidates some critical information about the requirements of the Election Act. The new bylaw states where nomination forms will be accepted and appoints a substitute returning officer, which would be the Chief Administrative Officer. Bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw, will be placed on the Town of Bruderheim website upon completion of third reading. And attached, we have the election bylaw existing and proposed, and that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we're looking for a motion from council for the second reading to this bylaw. Councilor Wayne,
The town council gives second reading to bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw.
thank you for that motion. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council on that motion? I do have one question that I reread the information again, and item number 31 under part 6. Just let everybody get to that page. And about the middle of the page, I got a question. It says only one candidate, scrutineer, or official agent per campaign may be present at any time in the voting station. When you look at the definitions, there's nothing that defines what the voting station is. I'd just like some clarity as to what we're trying to say here.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll let Mrs. Cote, I think I know the answer, but I'll let her address that.
So that definition means that there can't be a whole bunch of other people present during that time at the voting station.
Okay, is that one candidate, scrutineer, or official agent per person running for in the campaign? Or
That's
just,
correct. That's correct.
okay,
That's correct.
It doesn't really say that. It says one candidate, scrutineer, or official agent for campaign. And so is campaign to mean one person's election campaign or everyone's election campaign? It just sounds a little unclear, that's all.
I can tighten up that definition for you and bring it back.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I noticed that wasn't really 100% understanding what the true meaning of that was. That's the only thing that I know.
I think campaign defined in the Election Act is per candidate, Mr. Mayor, but we can put some clarity around that.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns, council? Okay, call for a vote then. All those opposed to the motion? Hearing none, the motion's carried. So we're looking for a motion for the third reading for this bylaw. Is someone willing to make that motion from council? Councilor Pat?
I move the town council give third reading to bylaw 04-2021, the election bylaw.
Thank you very much for that motion. Any comments, questions, or concerns from Councilor Judy?
If you've asked for them to do an adjustment, do we not have to wait until that adjustment is done before we do the third reading?
That's a good question.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. I was.
You were
Okay.
just gonna, so then should
I was trying not to be rude and override you, but
okay. So
Councillor Judy did it.
so we could ask Councilor Pat to
Rescind.
withdraw or rescind that motion, or we could just keep that motion for the time being, right?
I can rescind the motion
Okay,
until
thank you,
it's
Councilor Pat.
cleaned up.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So then we'll leave that third reading to come to a subsequent council meeting. The timing is going to be okay. We're not putting a monkey wrench into the plan. So okay, thank you. So then we can move on to 9.1, council committee report. Looking for a motion to accept the council committee reports as information. Councilor Judy.
I can make a motion that council receive the council committee reports as information.
Thanks. Any comments, questions, or concerns with the council committee reports? I just want to make a comment. This way people actually know that I read the reports. I want to commend Deputy Mayor Daniel for completing the ICS 100 course. I see you completed that March 18th. Awesome. Great job. Thanks for getting that done. Any other comments, questions, or concerns with the council committee reports? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote then. Anyone opposed to that motion? And that motion's carried. So then we move on to 9.2, the mayor report. Looking for a motion to receive the mayor report. Councilor
I'll
George?
make that motion. Make a motion that council receive the mayor's report as information as presented.
Thank you, Councilor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion? Okay, call for a vote. Anyone opposed to that motion? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Jordan. We're moving on to CAO report, looking for a motion to receive the CAO report as information. Councillor Pat.
Move that town council receive the chief administrative officer report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Pat. Any comments, questions, or concerns for our CAO on her report? No one has any questions this time? Councillor Judy.
So I see we've got some NATE students coming out and they're getting their waster tickets.
Mr. Mayor, I will let Mr. Tomashat address that.
And Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Schuler. So we do have some NATE students. Part of the NATE program for the water and wastewater is doing roughly 600 hours of classroom and 600 hours of practicum. In order to be issued their water and wastewater certificates, be it small systems, level 1, they have to do the practicum. In this case, these are volunteer students. A lot of municipalities this year have gone that way just due to budget constraints. However, regardless, these students must get those 600 hours in one way or the other. I currently have one starting next week, and I will have another one starting the following week. And just to give council a little bit of overview, is we're going to be focused on our CC, that's the valves that are on the properties. And as council can remember, we located all those last year, all except I think 3. And this year we want to verify and vindicate which ones work, which ones don't, so that going forward we can do some proper planning and budgeting to have those ones repaired and get them serviceable again. So this will be part of our asset management program. Along with that, we'll be working with our valves, our mainline water valves, and giving them a basic overview of what we do. I know one operator is going to be happy to have one of the NATE students help them out with our co-ops, so they'll get a really good overview of what some of the co-ops are like in our area. So it's a great program. I really strongly believe in it. I really thank council, all of council, for helping us, administration and myself, support this initiative. So I think it really will be a good outcome for both students that are starting with the town of Bruderheim.
That just opens up another question. So if we test these CC valves and find out, are we going to break any while we're doing it so that we have to repair them, or we're not going to do that? We're just going to see if they're working.
That's correct. We want to just ensure that they're either operating, they aren't. If they're not operating, we'll make note of it, put it into our asset management program, and then start budgeting for out. So in a nutshell, let's say we have 50 CCs in town that do not function or we cannot turn on or off, then we would start budgeting that throughout the years, as we did for the water meters. We budgeted for that going forward. So same thing, we would put a program in place, say over the next 5 years, we need this amount of money to get these CCs repaired and or water valves, main one water valve.
Mr. Thomas said, do you have a rough guess on the average replacement cost? Like, I know it depends if they're in the driveway or on the grass, but not talking about surface, but what would be the average cost for replacement?
The average cost right now, from what I've seen over the last 4 years, is anywhere from, if it's in a grassy spot, $800 to $1,000. If we're in a concrete spot, about $1,500.
Any further questions, Councillor Judy?
So if they're working, we're going to change. We're not going to change the color, but if they're not working, we're going to paint them red this time, eh?
Typically, so the code is blue, not red. Sorry.
Councillor Wayne?
Are there any, when you guys went through last time, is there any that are not accessible, I guess, that are under driveways, and what do we do about those?
Right, Mr. Mayor, through the councillor electrical, that's a really good question, and there's a really gray area on our bylaw. That's something that myself and Patty have been looking at. There are 2 that are under driveways that we cannot access. I wish I had a better answer for you. If we have to access those CCs, I guess the long and short of it is, if it was that bad, we would shut the mains down and then start attacking that driveway that they're covered in, which would be saw cut, and get that CC turned off if possible.
Is
Who would
it
those
possible-
costs? I'm sorry, go
I have
ahead.
it.
Hold on, I think Dennis is still talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the question is who would bear those costs? Is that what your question was, Wayne?
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering who would bear the cost, and would it be feasible if we can pinpoint the head? Is it possible to just bore a hole into the cement right where it is? Are we that?
Well,
defined?
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Letko, that's the problem. Most of the driveways have either ready rod or some type of reinforcement wire in it, and it throws our pin locator for a loop. We can take our best guess based on the property next to it. Most cases, out of what we've seen, the curb caulks are in line with the next property. However, there have been some anomalies that they are nowhere near what the other CCs have been. So for us, it would be it's a good educated guess is where we would have to start with.
And it's a homeowner expense, or is it a town expense if it has to
So-
be? Oh, hold on, no, that's a feedback, sorry. Whose expense is it if you have to go in and break away their driveway or sidewalk or whatever they've got on top of it?
It would fall under the same category as our water meters. And again, it's a little gray area. This is something Patty and I have to do a little more research on. In the past, it is the homeowner's responsibility. Under the development permit, it does indicate that those utilities must be accessible to town staff and or the town.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor George and then Councillor Judy.
If we action these valves and we find that they're not serviceable, and we know they're not serviceable, we cannot leave them. These valves have to be operable all the time. If we know they're not operable, they have to be fixed. Let's say somebody has cannot shut off the water inside the house. It's our responsibility to control that flow from the outside. And these things have to be fixed right at the time of we know about them.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Campbell, in my experience, most of the time when these CCs have to be accessed, they're under emergent conditions, being either a house fire or a severe break in the house. Most of the times that we've had to access these valves, they've been under, I wouldn't say emergent conditions, but homeowners have needed to access it to do some plumbing where their main line or their main valve in their house do not work. There are other methods and other avenues to isolate that in the interim, rather than trying to attack all these curb caulks. Freezing the lines, it's a very popular choice, is they freeze the line prior to the valve, replace the isolation valve in the home, then they can start isolating the water in their home. So I'm not trying to discount your concern, Councillor Campbell. However, I want to put it into perspective that there is a dollar value attached to doing this initiative and these repairs along with that initiative. But I just don't see it as being, we can't do all of them. If we had 50, now we're saying we need $50,000 to start repairing all these curb caulks. I don't think that's feasible for the town at this point. However, keeping that in check, the reality is most of these that happen are under emergent conditions, and that's very far and few between. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
I just hope we don't put ourselves in a position where we can't control a situation and we become liable.
And again, and I want to just go back to what I said a few minutes ago, if we had to control that situation, we would shut the mains down, where it would interrupt several residences, but we could control it and we would be able to attack it after the fact. So there's always control measures in place to control this type of situation. It's not an impossible thing for us to do, Councillor Campbell.
And Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Campbell, that's why we started the asset management program a few years back. And first of all, you have to locate everything, and then you have to identify the condition that it's in, and then you make a plan. to maintain those assets. And you're very right, Mr. Campbell, we have a responsibility to the community, but we also have to be mindful of our resources. So that's why you have a great asset management plan to talk about how are we going to address these things. And I think Mr. Thomas talking about the water meter replacement, we knocked that one out of the park. So yeah, so we're just moving, and I'm super excited that we're getting to these because obviously they have been an issue. And so we've identified where they are. Now we identify what condition they're in, and then the 2022 budget will start to include replacement, which will be funded from franchise fees, as council has directed administration to put away the franchise fees for utility upgrades. So it's a great plan, and it's starting to work, and we're starting to see the benefits from it.
Councillor Judy?
Yeah, two questions. I'm almost wondering if thermal imaging might help you locate your shutoff valves. And if you need one, let me know. Second question, I know one of the things we did in our house when I'm doing latent plumbing work here, we had to change our shutoff valve. And yeah, that's exactly what we did, is they froze it off and then they went ahead and changed it. Because they're finding that problem in a lot of towns is the shutoffs aren't working. So it works, and then they're putting on a new style because the old ones are not really turning off the water. So in us changing our billing of our water, I also found out that my water does not shut off totally either. So we had to change the valve, which is good. And that's one of the things as a resident you should be keeping up. And third thing, what I have noticed in other towns is if those curb caulks are too high and they're getting damaged, and that's kind of during construction. So if they lay it in the grass and it's 4 inches high or whatever, they're going back to the city and getting them cut down. And every municipality I've worked with, they have done it for free to the homeowner to put them in a proper position, but kept the PVC around it so it's protecting it, but put them in a proper position so they're not wrecking it. Just information.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, through the Councillor Schuler, just on your second question, as far as thermal imaging goes, Public Works did obtain a thermal imager last year for exactly one of those reasons, was to find some of these hard to locate valves and also to locate water leaks underground. And the third part of your question was raising and lowering the CCs. We actually, 2 years ago, with that Nate student, we had him go around and lower where possible. Most of the CC stems have an adjustment nut on the stem. We just back it off. We can lower and raise the stem as needed. And I believe that we did, quote me on this, but I believe it was 27 CCs we lowered 2 years ago. So we do see that. We do have homeowners which are really, really good at letting us know if it's too high. Some homeowners actually like it to be higher, and we've actually addressed that with them. And they said, no, they want to see it. They want to be able to see it, not hit it with their mower in case it comes up a little too high. So yeah, we're very cognizant of that, and we will continue to maintain those CCs where needed.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for CAO for report? I just had a couple things I wanted to note. Thanks very much for getting the speed boards back in town for Bruderheim. Very much appreciate that. Also wanted to inquire on the third page, I believe it is, on your financial services. It says reviewed collection listing for old utility account to go to council for write-off. Is that something that's coming to council soon then?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we're just watching for an opening. So we've identified, as you know, we hired a collection agency. We've tried multiple. Some of these are from 20 years ago, some of these accounts. So yeah, we'll be coming to council to get that cleaned up for us.
Great, thank you. Is it a sizable amount?
27,000, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you. And on page 4, I believe, on community services, I just wanted to give an app for keeping the Women Rising event moving in our community. That's great. Great to hear. And I think the Easter egg hunt was well accepted in the community, and thanks for making that happen. We're looking forward to that and the volunteer appreciation event. I know that for myself and maybe somebody else from council would be willing to help volunteer at that event if there's anything needed from folks to help hand out the the food. And then the last thing I wanted to put in is thanks again to Fortis for the grant application that we were successful on. We're going to send a letter to Fortis thanking them for that donation.
Yes, we will, Mr. Mayor.
Love to have an opportunity to sign that thing. And anyone else have any comments, questions, or concerns on the CAO report? Councillor Judy.
No questions, just a great job on that Easter egg hunt. I've seen the different ones following through on it, and it's interesting to see. I even recognize some of those places around town. Didn't join, but I recognize them. Oh, good. I wonder if the kids know the town. That was great. Good job, girls.
Yeah. And Councillor Pat.
I just wanted to thank admin and town for supplying a gift or for the auction at the stair climb for the emergency firefighters that I understand they did quite well, somewhat around 2,400 with their items. So go a long ways towards their climb that's coming. So that was good on them. Good on you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, or concerns with the motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Anyone opposed to the motion? And the motion is carried. Closed session. We have a closed session. So we're looking for a motion to go out of the public session. Councillor Wayne.
A motion to go out of open session.
Thank you. And now we need a motion to go into the closed session. Councillor Pat.
I move that we go into closed session.
Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion or the other motion for that matter? Hearing none, call for a vote then. Anyone opposed? And the motion is carried. Thank you.